So the Inflation Reduction Act is a law that was passed by Congress last August. It includes a suite of different provisions, mostly through the tax code, to help reduce carbon in our energy sector and in our economy. In particular, there are a few things that I think are really relevant for ethanol producers. I would say the one that we get the most interest in is a new provision called the Clean Fuel Production Credit. That one is called 45Z. It's essentially the area of the code where you see it. So there's 45Z are literally the letters next to it. Another one is 45Q, which is something that you can access if you sequester or utilize carbon. And then there's also some money for USDA infrastructure, roughly $500 million. And then there's also is a short-term extension of a few existing tax credits for cellulosic biofuels and for biomass-based diesel. So that's something the law does not actually answer. The law just says very simply you cannot use both at the same time, meaning 45Z and 45Q. So you can't file a tax return that has both 45Z and 45Q credits involved in it. They do not say whether that's a one-time election, whether that's an annual election, whether choosing one of them leaves you out of the other credit forever. So this is a really important point that we're trying to fix right now with Treasury and IRS. So this again is unfortunately something that was not answered in the law. We think it's really clear that it should allow that. The one thing that the law did require was the use of the Argonne-Greek model, and anything that is included in the Argonne-Greek model for reductions in the carbon intensity of a fuel, whether it's ethanol or something else, we believe should be included when the Treasury does their final guidance. So 45Z is unfortunately one of the very last provisions that becomes operable in the entire Inflation Reduction Act. It becomes operable on January 1 of 2025, meaning you can claim it for tax years 2025, 2026, or 2027. So right now what's happening is you've had the IRS go through this process for all the things that became effective the first of this year, January 1. They've started to do guidance rules on those. And then I would say maybe by later this year, early next year, they're going to start working on the guidance for 45Z to give us some idea of how they're going to treat this. And they're going to answer some of these questions that were not answered in the law, so we don't have, things we don't have a full idea of how they're going to work. Hopefully, they will answer these through guidance. This is, I think, really key. This is now, Congress has done its work. Now it goes over to the executive agency and the Biden administration to do their work. And part of that is you really need to meet with those people who are going to make decisions on this. So in the past, where we would meet with someone like the EPA on the RFS, we meet with USDA on things related to biofuels infrastructure because they provide funding. Now we meet with the Treasury. The Treasury, and then I guess you'd call it a little bit more narrowly the IRS, which is an agency of the Treasury. And that's the most important component of this, is finding those people at the Treasury who are going to write the guidance and the rules for 45Z. Additionally, there still is a role for Congress as well, because Congress, when they wrote this law, they do have a vested interest in how this comes out. So Congress is going to make pressure upon the administration to make sure that this law is implemented in the way that they saw fit, the way that they wanted it to be implemented. So there's kind of a dual role for lobbying Congress to put pressure on the administration. Most likely going to be more of our Democratic friends, because this is a Democratic administration, that also trying to work with some of the folks at Treasury and IRS. They can, but it's not necessarily that simple. A future administration can obviously change any rule they would like. And when you talk about something with Treasury and IRS, they essentially have two different levels of rulemaking. There is guidance, which is something that does not require notice and comment and a long, drawn-out ordeal. It's possible 45Z is done by guidance, and they also do sometimes tax rulemaking, which is much harder to unwind. So I guess it depends, number one, on whether or not the Treasury and IRS, they go through a process of doing guidance or rulemaking. And then beyond that, will this provision have some bipartisan support? That's I think a key long-term issue that we need to work with. The IRA was a very partisan bill. It was only supported by Democrats. Now it's up to us as an industry. If we think 45Z is something we really care about, we need to find some bipartisan support. And if there's bipartisan support, if you would have a changeover in administration on January 20th, 2025, you would have the ability to have some people who could push back against making big changes to this that would be unwelcome for our industry. Well, I think one of the biggest things they should do is if they have real questions, because again, this law did not answer all the fine points. If they have a question, they should come and reach out to us and ask. If we don't know the answer, we're going to seek it out, we'll find it. And I think they should also let their members of Congress, Democrat or Republican, know that this is an important thing that they're looking at. This is important to the future of their business.